Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name's Aaron Dunn. I'm here with my friend and assistant Alex. We're going to talk to you about the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, Rings of Prime premiere that we just sat through and watched. We'd thought about doing a live reaction video first, but it was going to get a bit tedious, and so we just stopped because Alex hadn't seen it until just now. Make sure to check the links below for links to my work on the Silmarillion Symphony, silmarillionSymphony.bandcamp.com, if you want to support the work that I'm doing in music that is related to Tolkien. Anyway, we'll get started. Let's get rolling. So we just watched the first two episodes, and I've seen it twice. Alex, you've now seen it once. And, well, there's a lot. You could start just about anywhere. Alex, where do you think we should begin?
Probably at the beginning.
All right, sounds good. Wait, now, how much of a Tolkien person are you? Like, in terms of the fandom, how nerdy are you with this?
More nerdy than most, but
Okay.
not as nerdy as
Okay.
you or like I'm not that level.
Okay. So what did you think of it? What was your first impression?
Let's see. First impression wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be.
Okay.
I thought there was gonna be a lot more, I don't know, a lot more wokeness than there was.
Sort of cheesy party line stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't really hear a bunch of that.
Also, did not like Elrond's hair.
Okay.
Just right off the bat, did not like it.
Okay.
I did not need 50s pompadour Elrond.
But what about Celebrimbor's hair?
Not as bad. But then again, I do think elves should have long hair.
Is that long hair for elves?
Long hair
I'm
for
in the
elves.
long hair for elves camp for sure on this. I'm not a hardliner. I don't hate you if you like the short hair elves, though.
Thought Celebrimbor looked like William Dafoe almost. A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yep.
A little bit different.
I'm interested to see what his character ends up doing because he has a very complicated history that goes back to the Silmarillion. But we'll get into that later. We have other characters to talk about, I think.
A lot of other characters.
I think I'll start with the one I like the best.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't necessarily expect this to go this way. I think the best character in the entire two episodes was Disa, and it wasn't close.
Oh, not at all. No.
It wasn't close. It was kind of exactly how I'd want to see dwarves interacting with one another, and certainly the first dwarf spouse that has like lines and stuff like that. That was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the characters I was most worried about.
Okay,
but it played out really well.
yeah, and so I thought she was great. The personality was perfect. Like she's giving Durin crap, which is great. She's friendly. So it kind of brought people together, which is really kind of nice. And so that was really not necessarily, I don't want to say a pleasant surprise. Like I was kind of like, yeah, this is great. That felt really good.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of that. And we don't have a ton of information on what dwarf women are like, but
all we knew that they had
worked.
beards.
Yeah, and so that wasn't bad at all. Trouble characters.
Galadriel, a little bit.
Mixed bag.
Mixed bag.
Okay. That's for you. I'm not saying mixed bag.
Like there was some aspects I liked, but then there was some stuff I didn't like as well.
Okay, what'd you like?
Well, I liked the actress, the voice that she did.
Okay.
Pretty good. A lot of it is on voice and the look. I think they made her look almost a bit too young in the face.
Okay.
The makeup could have been done differently.
But elves don't age.
They don't age that way, but it still looked like there was a 4-year-old or like not 4-year-old, but there was like a definite. You look at it wrong and you see just a young child.
Okay. Yep. So a little more youthful maybe than you'd like to see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Slightly.
All right. Let's dig into the lore then.
Okay.
Okay. So for me, Silmarillion guy. It's like my favorite bit. I don't know if most Tolkien people will go with the Silmarillion as their favorite book, but I do. And I also very much like the Children of Húrin, but that I don't think will factor in here. We got a little callback to some dragons in the prologue, which I thought was cool. They did some callbacks to the First Age. The timings did not make sense to me, and they didn't look, or it just didn't seem like the timing and the way it was narrated seemed to make sense. So I think I'll go back to what I was telling you earlier, because we paused a couple of times because I had to get things off my chest during this thing.
Honestly.
Just to talk through the lore and see how this goes. But so you've got first age. Galadriel has, I believe, 3 brothers, and all of them die within a relatively short period of time. This is spoiler alert. If you haven't read the Silmarillion, I highly recommend you do. Alex, you need to read the Silmarillion. And just as a side note here, I have a CD, and it's going to be linked below. Actually, it is of Finrod. It's an EP form, but it's about Finrod and his journeys throughout Middle-earth. So we can go through how all of her brothers die in the lore. The first 2 brothers, Egnor and Angrod, they live in a place called Dorthonion in Beleriand, and that place gets overrun by orcs and fire and all manner of misery in the Battle of Sudden Flame in the first age. This is the first one where Morgoth really breaks out, and this is the first time we see dragons as well. And so those 2 brothers die right at the beginning of that battle. Boom, they're done. So there's 2 of her brothers that are dead, and it's Morgoth's fault. Now Finrod is different because he ends up fighting during that battle as well. He ends up getting cut off from all the rest of the elves and really thoroughly outnumbered by orcs, and so he ends up getting rescued by a gentleman named Barahir, who is a man, and his son's name is Beren. And if you're familiar with the Beren and Luthien story, you can check that out. LOTR Wiki or whatever, One Ring Fandom.net or whatever these things are. I know there's a fandom wiki that will have abridged versions of all this stuff. But Finrod swears an oath to Barahir that he's like, I'm going to help your family out if you guys are ever in a jam again. And because Barahir bailed him out pretty big time. So that's Finrod in that battle. Later on in the story, Beren and Luthien, Beren shows up to where Finrod is living, and Finrod goes on the journey with Beren, trying to get a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown, which is a pretty ridiculous story. They end up going through a place called Minas Tirith or Tolan Garoth, which is not the same Minas Tirith as in the Third Age that you'd be familiar with from Lord of the Rings. It's a different place. It's a tower that Finrod himself built in Beleriand to be a watchtower over the plain, over the Enfauglith, which used to be called Ardgallan. Anyway, they end up getting jumped by Sauron in that situation there over in Tolan Garoth, and Sauron tries to discover who all these people are and what their mission is and everything. And so they all get thrown in a pit, and there's werewolves. Now, it seems that they've hinted at that in Rings of Power, that like I think it's Finrod who they're talking about as Galadriel's brothers that's killed. He's got, like, it's clear he's been lacerated on his tricep, bicep area, and in other spots. I didn't really freeze frame it or anything. It's just you look at it and like, okay, I can see that there's some damage that's been done there somehow. Yeah. Then you've got that mark that marks a complete fabrication according, like, with the lore. There's nothing there because the way Finrod dies is he actually him and Beren are the last 2 people standing in this pit, not giving any information about who anybody is or about what their journey is to Sauron, and so the werewolves are just eating people alive. And Finrod saves Beren's life, bursts his bonds, kills the werewolf with his hands and teeth. Yes, he bites at the werewolf's neck, and he somehow kills the thing. Finrod had magic, by the way, as well, which is pretty cool. It's one of those nice things from the Silmarillion that I really enjoy, is that the elves have a degree of magic that they're involved with. And so Finrod dies basically at the hands of Sauron, sort of.
Yeah.
The intimation in the series is that he was hunting the enemy, and then we see how Galadriel's hunting the enemy, and I just look at that and I'm like, that's okay. So what is there? Is there another brother that we don't know about? Because I'd be interested in that, because Finrod didn't die that way, and she wouldn't have seen his body either, because Beren and Luthien bury him when Luthien shows up and rescues Beren out of the pit of werewolves and defeats Sauron herself with her trusty dog Huon. I have a dog named Huan. He's a large Anatolian Shepherd, and he's sitting right over here. He's wondering why I'm using his name at the moment. But anyway, so they also pitch where Galadriel's brother dies sort of after Morgoth has been defeated, which that doesn't... So they're having to alliterate here, which...
Because they only have access to the appendices, they don't, not to the entire
so they have to sort of make up their own story. I feel for them. I'm not finding that terribly convincing. But if you can tell in my voice, I'm not hating on it. It's just it's not convincing. So that's the Finrod angle here. And I thought, when I saw last year when they released something and they said, they might be doing Finrod, I'm like, that's really cool. Kind of sad to hear that, but it's kind of cool. I wonder what they're going to do with this. And if they're going to do like flashbacks into Valinor and stuff like that, that's neat. I don't know how they're going to get around that. They're not showing things in huge detail in Valinor, but there's enough there. So the other thing that's really weird for me with Galadriel's character is that she's really vengeful. And having read the books, having read the Silmarillion, she's not a huge player in the Silmarillion, but she's there. And her positioning in the book is very interesting. She's still very highly thought of. She's not hugely vengeful at all. She doesn't associate with the people that are, particularly Feanor, who she despised, and would have no part of his whole thing. She did still join the rebellion of the Noldor against the Valar to go avenge the loss of the Silmarils. Yes, she joined that more for a desire, and it says it straight in the book, to see new lands and have kingdoms of her own and stuff like that. And that was many of the princes and princesses of the Noldor, although she's one of the few ladies in the whole group. But this whole vengeance thing that seems to be happening there, I'm really not terribly impressed by that, because of where she lived in Middle-earth in the First Age, which was in Doriath with Thingol and Melian. And now we're going very deep into the lore. Again, this is all a lot of this ties into Beren and Luthien, which I know well. I have some music written for that, but that's just a little plug. But the deal with Melian, which is really fascinating, is that Melian is a species in Middle Earth, or the way taxonomy of these beings is she's on the level of Gandalf, is Melian. And as well Sauron, they're all Maiar. So they're sort of these beings that they can kind of change shape if they want. Sauron is known to change shape and shift shape and stuff like that in the First Age, and Huon manages to fix him of that and really jacks him up. Great story about that. If they do bring anything with Sauron out and you actually get to see Sauron in some kind of form, I'd be very interested to see if there's like any like gashes or scars in his neck or something from getting beat up by a dog. Because that I could deal with that. If that was an Easter egg, Amazon, you go ahead with that. But anyway, Galadriel she spent a lot of time in Doriath with Thingol and Melian. Melian was super wise and had power that had, quite frankly, nothing to do with swords. She managed to construct this, they call it the Girdle of Melian, but it's basically, you could call it a force field, so to speak. It's like she was able to project this power around her realm and protect it that way. Just out of the air, I guess. And I don't know, like, and very obviously an immortal being, very patient. So, and Melian had a ton of wisdom in the Silmarillion, especially in the Beren and Luthien story. She's incredibly farsighted, and can sort of see things playing out like 15 moves ahead kind of a thing. Much smarter than her husband, to be honest. And so Galadriel spent a lot of time around there. So it doesn't wash for me that she's this vengeful. So I'm hoping they can sort that out. But I'm going to turn it back over to you, Alex, and I'm sure you have some thoughts or questions. Ask questions if you want.
Questions. I would probably be better because you're the expert in this area.
Sure.
But so what age? So what time period would this be? No, this is Second Age.
Right.
That they don't really give an explanation.
They haven't done that
what
yet.
Year this is, how far this is from other events.
Yep.
So
I think they've alluded to that Galadriel's been hunting for a few hundred years, or maybe a couple hundred years. So at least a couple hundred, maybe 300 years into the Second Age. Numenor, as we've been at least shown in the trailers, is fairly developed and very beautiful. So, that kind of stonework doesn't just happen overnight. Mm-hmm. So that just didn't appear. So I'm assuming we could be 300 to 500 years into that age. The other bit was
the Durin line has already started as well.
Yeah. So we can sort of place that, but I don't have a memorization of all those dates. The other thing is that one pukey looking dude that is really nasty to Arondir in Harad alludes to, we're not the same people that fought against you 1,000 years ago. So we could be 500 years in. We could be 1,000 years into the Second Age, which might wash with the stranger showing up. The guy coming out of the sky.
Yeah.
Who I'm guessing is some kind of Valar being, or a Maiar or something like it. Maybe it might be Gandalf. Lots of people have been saying it's Gandalf. It wouldn't surprise me that it was.
Well, then we might have seen 5 streaks in the sky if it was that.
Yeah, it's sort of like you saw several different people seeing the same fireball going through the sky, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. So then, were there 5 scenes there?
No, but you saw Gil Galad seeing it go by. We're going to talk about Gil Galad as well.
So maybe they were saying just, even if they saw 4, the brothers could have been traveling together.
Well, that's possible, but I kind of think it's just they're doing one at a time, and that's going to be. I think they've disclosed they don't tell you the identity of the stranger this season, so I think we've probably got a dozen episodes to wait through.
Mm-hmm. And then we have to wait another couple of years before
seeing it, like Rings of Power at all. So the rings haven't been made yet. Spoiler alert, if you haven't watched the show yet, we're going to spoil it for you today. So if you need to pause us and go watch it, go do it. Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, no, never mind.
All right. The other thing that struck me were the Elven Politics. I think we paused it so I could tell you about this, so might as well go on with it. It's very interesting watching Elrond be basically told you're not an elf lord right off the top, which I almost laughed out loud. It's hard not to swear talking about this. We're going to try not to swear on this podcast. I really care about this material, so it's hard sometimes. Mm-hmm. But I was pretty shocked that they were intimating that Elrond sort of had a lower status than the rest of the elves kicking around. He is half elven, so I can understand there might be some weird stuff there, but because the elves are snooty about things like that.
Maybe that's why it's a Pompadour to show he's not fully elf.
He's not. Is it like IT? If you don't have a full beard, you haven't been doing it for very long. Like that's literally part of the shtick. No, that has not sat well with me because Elrond's father literally saved all the elves and men at the end of the First Age, so he would be royalty. And not royalty in the terms that Gil Galad is, because Elrond doesn't really technically get a kingship at all in the Legendarium. He's the Lord of Rivendell. He's the ruler there. He is probably the wisest one and one of the better warriors as well by the time we get to Frodo and Bilbo and all them. Mm-hmm. But it makes no sense that he would get short shrift from the elven nobility when he's like it. And his father was Arendil, and you can see all this. They may talk through this in the future and find a way to spell this out to make an interesting story. But what? Good. Oh, well, we'll check on that. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
But Yeah, Elrond is definitely like they're in this. They're not saying he's an elf lord. I'm calling BS on that because he definitely is. As much as the rest of them are. The other thing is this weird thing between Gil Galad and Galadriel, which I trust will be spelled out in the show, but it doesn't make a ton of sense to me in terms of the lore. Whether they knew each other all that well in the first age, I don't know. They probably knew who each other were. But but for there to be this sort of disdain between particularly Galadriel and the rest of everyone doesn't make any sense because, again, she's a princess that's been alive forever.
I think she alluded to being like 10,000 something at some point.
Yeah, that was me alluding to that. Like, we can't actually quantify what her age is because she was, I think, born before the sun and moon were there. And she would remember when the two trees were still alive in Valinor, which I thought was actually very cool that they showed the two trees getting killed off.
We showed one of them. I don't know if they showed both.
They showed them both. They showed both. Or at least all of them going up in sort of flame and then being all charred. But, yeah, some of this stuff is just not sitting very well. But those politics don't make much sense to me. That I can definitely understand there would be disagreements between them, but I understand, again, Galadriel is royalty in this situation as well. Even if in the show they're depicting her as a pretty terrible leader, which is, I think, would you agree with that?
Yeah, they're depicting her as someone that doesn't know what she's doing.
Right.
Incompetent almost.
And she's definitely she has a mission. It's just like, she's not doing a very good job convincing anybody to follow her. Anyway.
Isn't she supposed to be like the most beautiful being ever? Shouldn't she have people flocking towards her?
Yes, and this is not a shot at the actress playing her, Morfydd Clark. It's not a problem at all for me. But Galadriel is depicted as tall even for an Eldar or for an elf. So that might be something to look at because she's really tall. And I would say that the Jackson films did a very good job as showing how tall she was, because she appeared taller than her husband Celeborn, who doesn't make an appearance in this, which is a little suspicious. Galadriel's married by now, by the way, but they're going to do something else with that.
They keep alluding to the love relationship almost between her and Elrond, which bothered me.
Yeah, that looked kind of strange.
Yeah, like it wasn't like said like,
it wasn't creepy or anything.
No, but it was like
different.
Hinted at these two have a relationship at some point. Yeah. But I'm like, that isn't how it works out at all.
Yeah, Elrond wasn't married by now, but she was. She and her husband Celeborn, I guess, doesn't make an appearance in the show, and we'll see what they do with that. But yeah, it's weird. It was a little weird. It was a little bit too friendly, almost. It was like, what? Like,
you're too good of friends.
People being affectionate with one another, it doesn't really bother me, but like,
they're too good of friends at that point.
Yeah, and technically in the lore she's married, but if we're doing something different, we're doing something different. But yeah, I think she should probably be taller, or at least appear taller on the screen. And because we can do these things with dwarves, hobbits, and whatever else, and have been for 20-some years, I think that's a missed opportunity.
You could tell that they used that it wasn't just camera work. At least two of the dwarves, when they were the two escorting Elrond into the into Khazad-dûm at the beginning, you could tell they were actually like physically shorter. I don't remember the
that's good.
polite term.
It's fine.
But yeah, like the shorter people.
Yeah, that's fine.
But
well, they might have used people with literal dwarfism. Like, that's possible.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with that.
I know there's, I think, only one actor that Peter Dinklage refuses to ever play a dwarf.
Right. Yeah,
he's an actor with dwarfism, but like he will never play a dwarf. He will never play an elf.
Yep.
I think he was. I'm pretty sure if he was asked for this movie, he might say so.
Well, he did Game of Thrones, so they might. Well, I guess they've used actors from both, but anyway, that's beside the point.
Because Game of Thrones also was they had Boromir in there.
Yes, they did, but that's different. I don't think Sean Bean will be making an appearance in this.
No, he.
But if they do, you can guarantee they'll kill him off after a couple episodes, because that's just what you do with Sean Bean characters, apparently.
Interesting thing I learned just recently with the Third Lord of the Rings, how his father went mad
Oh yeah.
What they alluded for was lead poisoning, because they had almost lead pewter.
Oh yeah.
Plates, the acidity of the tomatoes. That's an actual thing that happened. Was then the silver and the lead would start going into your system, and that's alluded like why he started to go a little crazy.
That's not why.
Not why.
The Palantir. He was looking at the Palantir.
I forgot they had one.
Yeah, he did, and he wasn't supposed to be looking at it either. But he thought he thought highly of himself. Denethor did.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what else? What else we got? You want to talk about the Hobbits?
Let's talk about the Hobbits.
Okay, you go first. I don't even know what to say. I full disclosure for me, I'm a person. Many people if you're watching this and you've been following Lord of the Rings for the last 20 years like I have, you've probably filled out one of these goofy Facebook quizzes or whatever these web things are. Is like, what would you be if you were in Middle Earth? Elf every time. So I don't think much of hobbits. And so, Alex, you're going to go first.
Okay.
I don't want. I'll go second on this one. That's good. Then please.
I'm a fan of hobbits.
How do you like the depiction of them then? The Harfoots, though, that they're Harfoots.
I actually didn't mind it. The depiction of them. I found it a bit weird. They were nomadic, but that's what they were at that time period, right?
I guess.
It was just weird looking at that after being 20 years of my life and used to them inside of a hobbit hole.
Having gardens and stuff.
Gardens and all that.
Permanent gardens.
Permanent gardens.
Not roving gardens.
But I didn't mind. I didn't mind them. They had the right accent. And again, voices and maintaining accents throughout stuff is pretty important to me for stuff. Yep. Like, even if you change actors for something, keep the same accent, keep the speech the same, don't completely change it.
Right. You didn't have Kevin Costner, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves going on. So that's good. Everybody stayed in the right accent. That's good.
Yeah.
It was like a mixture of accents, though. It wasn't all the same.
No, but you could definitely tell that's a Hobbit accent. Yeah. The dwarves, love the dwarves. I don't think they could have done much better with the dwarves.
I don't think honestly. So far, so
good.
The
dwarves have been wonderful. They were loud. They were rude. They had, I think the beards were the best beards that we've had so far.
I appreciated that Disa's beard wasn't gaudy and ridiculous. It was more subtle.
Like, it was, yes, there was a beard there, but it's not like this is a male's beard.
Right.
It was more like...
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is, I think, the best beard representation that we've seen of actually when in the books, because he says beards down to their ankles.
Yeah. Well,
past their ankles.
Dad definitely did.
Yeah.
His beard.
No, because you could tell, like, even if like the beard went here, he had it hooked in his belt loop, and it went down farther.
Full disclosure, I fell asleep during the second episode. So this happens.
But yeah, the dwarves, I don't have a complaint. They were loud, they were annoying, they were rude.
They're disagreeable.
I had no problems with the dwarves at all.
Particularly, they're disagreeable with elves.
Yeah, so everything... Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not so bad. I would agree with that on the dwarves. My dog's growling in his sleep. Maybe he's gonna wake up. But anyway, yeah, I thought the dwarves were good. I didn't think there was that much there to really be that upset about. Like what I liked about it was a family with a nice, decent relationship, which is nice to see.
Yeah,
and so that's a win for me.
Yeah. And
both
parents present and loving.
The wife is giving the husband crap and telling him to be better, and I think that's great.
It was.
I don't have a problem with that.
I have no problem at all. Then that was one of the characters I was most worried about.
Right.
Was because I was worried. Like, I was never against them putting in actors of color.
Yeah.
But I just wanted it to be done right. I didn't want it to be like, oh, I'm this different color. I like how they put them in there, but like nothing is. It's not like
it was good.
Knowledge that. This is your different color. It was like everyone just, it was actually just like, there was no problem with skin tone. It was, there was the racial problems that are present anyways.
Right.
Elves, dwarves, stuff like that. But there was no skin tone problems at all or even acknowledged. It was just there, which I'm like, it was done well.
And the character is good.
Yeah.
Which is the most important bit.
It's like the character is done well. That's the most important bit. It's not like, oh, we have to have this in here. It was done well.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I appreciated that as well, and it was good. Yeah, it was acted nicely too, and they wrote her in a way that made her kind of funny as well. Which actually,
I think it needed some humor. You need at least the one comedic character to bring it to life.
I didn't find the Hobbits overly funny, so I thought the dwarves being funny was actually right where I needed it to be. Let's get into some conspiracies. We got to figure out who the stranger is. I've said Gandalf.
I was Gandalf.
Gandalf. Okay, so I
thought
Gandalf
so when I saw the nose and the eyes, and they held on to that face for a bit too long for people to realize his distinctive features. I'm like, and he also has the height for Gandalf.
Right. And what's the other weird character that's in there?
I know we have Eminem coming up at some point.
Yeah, well,
Eminem Elf, whoever that is.
Yeah, that could be interesting. There's a lot of ways they can take the Numenor thing and the Elven thing as well. So there was we had the stranger. Halbrand. Dude, where's my boat? And why is Galadriel swimming 300 miles? That doesn't work for me, but all right.
No.
That is what it is.
That bothered me, but then again, maybe Elvish endurance, something like that.
Oh yeah, they're definitely
they can spin it so that it works.
Man. Yeah, that won't be too hard. It requires some suspension of belief. I'm encouraging us to have suspension of
give it a chance almost.
Yeah, like it's all right. Like it's somebody's adaptation, and if you understand the material well, like it usually will come off. Some things are saying it's like, do you understand the material well? I don't think so, but that's okay. Like you can still make a good show.
Yeah,
that shouldn't stop them. It won't be the same.
So
story.
far, it's better than anything Netflix has put out as an adaptation.
Great, that's good. I
Yeah.
Hardly watch Netflix, believe it or not.
No, I'm not surprised.
Okay.
Joe Rogan has a comedy special.
I know. I believe it. So I have a thought about Halbrand.
And that's the dude on the boat, right?
The dude on the boat, yeah. This is probably going to get proven wrong, but if it's right and I say it, I'm going to look brilliant, so I have to chance it. Part of what I'm thinking about him, they're saying he says he's from the south, or talking about the Southrons that destroyed his home. So he could be from that Harad area again that got blown up, the Hornden or whatever, with no bodies, which is a little bit, that's weird. There's obviously some weird stuff happening in the east of Middle-earth at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But Sauron, he is there at that point. That's the thing.
So he is in Mordor at that point.
I'm not sure that he's necessarly in Mordor,
but he's in that area.
Here's where I'm going with this, is that he gets, I know that he scraps with the Númenóreans a number of times in the Second Age and feigns repentance. And eventually gets a high seating up there, believe it or not, in Númenor. Like he's like almost like the regent or something in Númenor, which is a really bad idea. But he convinced the men that they might be able to avoid death. So here's the way Númenor falls apart, guys. I don't know if they're going to tell this in here. I hope they can tell about that. But Sauron convinces the men of Númenor, not all of them, but some of them, to take their navy and go to Valinor and demand immortality and take over.
Which doesn't
safe
work.
to say it does not work. And then Númenor is destroyed, and Elendil and Isildur and the faithful, they bail out to Middle-earth and they go and start Arnor and Gondor. And that's where they kind of kick off. But I'm wondering how Sauron is going to get to Númenor in this show if you don't have access to some of this material. So I wonder, this is sort of a 5% shot. I'm wondering if the guy on the raft is actually Anatar or Sauron. And that's how he gets in. And the reason I say this is because the Númenóreans have a good relationship with elves, mainly because the first Númenórean, so to speak, and their first king is Elros, who is Elrond's brother. And he's half elven.
Because they're both basically half elves.
They are, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Haley Arendelle, baby. That was their dad. They get to make a choice, which is pretty fascinating. And so Elrond decided to be an elf, and Elros decides to be a man. And he gets to live for like 500 years. It's kind of crazy. I'm assuming he's gone by now. If we see Elros in this series, I think you can infer from that timeline that we're within the first 500 years of the Second Age or so.
But he hasn't been mentioned at all. So
no, and because he's Silmarillion, they won't be able to.
He was never mentioned at all in the appendices?
I don't think so.
So I think they have access only to the appendices from the third book.
Yeah. So I think perhaps if you don't have access to all the backstory with Sauron getting to Numenor, this may be their plot device to get him to Numenor. Because what better way than to save Galadriel's butt than to make a friend in Numenor? And I think that's where they're going. And you know, we really don't know. Maybe somebody has a lead.
Dunedain people?
The Dunedain are somewhat... They're a mixture of Numenorians and so forth.
But they were not... That's way later on?
Yeah,
okay.
We don't even have Gondor yet.
True.
And we don't have Arnor. We have these sort of proto-communities, I guess you would call them. Like you have the place out in Harad, which is very agrarian. You have the Hobbits, very agrarian. They stay that way. We haven't seen any of the Rohirric people. But we've seen the Men of the East a little bit. They're a nasty bunch. I don't know what's going to happen with the Theo character at all. I'm not understanding what his point is right now, but...
It'll be clear.
Yeah.
Maybe he's Sauron.
Yep. No.
That sword would have been fully formed and everything.
No, definitely not. But hey, we don't know, and there's a lot of weird stuff happening. I think what I do like about it is I'm not a huge environmental activist kind of person, but I kind of like that evil coming back into the world or manifesting itself in the world has an ecological effect, because that's true. I kind of like that, like the leaf turning black. That's kind of all right. I don't mind that.
Fun,
like it's a little bit. It doesn't make the show, but
yeah.
But that's, I don't know. That's
another thing that I didn't hate was the set design, the prop design.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. I was wary because some of the stuff like early on that you would see, it would be like, it looked like the male shirts were almost just like an imprint on a regular shirt. You could see it crinkling. Yeah. But now looking at it now, didn't have a big problem with it.
Yep.
You could tell some bits were definitely like 100% CGI and like some scenes or just a dude in a green suit. But like I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
The orcs that we saw, I didn't hate them. It looked like it was actual prosthetics like they used in
it did. Yeah, especially
Lord of the Rings.
The one in Far-Harad or Tar-Harad or whatever you call it.
Like that they used in Lord of the Rings more than where they used heavy CGI in The Hobbit.
Yep.
Which is, in my opinion, why Lord of the Rings somewhat look a little better than The Hobbit.
Yep. Right. Yep. The other thing with the orcs is I'm looking forward to seeing more of them. I've seen some of the pictures. If you haven't seen the picture of the orcs for the new series, by all means have a look at it. They're very different from Jackson's orcs. They're not completely different, but they are very different.
The mouth is very different.
Yeah, and that's okay.
They have facial hair.
I didn't catch that, but
the one that they cut the head off had a beard.
Did he have a beard? I didn't catch
before.
it.
I might have gotten chopped off in the beheading, but
yeah. But where I'm going with that is you've got the way orcs came to be. They talk about this in Lord of the Rings when Sauron's explaining it to the Uruk-hai, is that the orcs were elves once. So
twisted and tormented, though.
Yeah, exactly. And they were just mutilated into being these hateful, awful creatures.
So you can.
But I think maybe 5,000 years earlier than when we watched Lord of the Rings, they might look a little different.
Yeah,
which
they
is
would
cool.
Be either less or maybe
it might be more elven.
Yeah, hence the somewhat of having hair.
Yeah. So we don't know.
But those hands, though,
the hands were frightening.
Which they did their job.
Yeah, the kind of horror-esque aspects of it, I thought were kind of cool.
Yeah, something we haven't seen much of before.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
This
style. And I think they did that without going too far over with it. Mm-hmm. Like if they went any further with it, I'm not sure where that would have really gone. I'm not a horror guy, so
no. I'll enjoy the odd 80s thriller or something flick. Like that. Yeah, I'll enjoy that, but any of this new stuff, it's not my thing.
Yeah. Score?
I enjoyed it. Yeah. Didn't like the Elven themes, but I'm used to the Elven themes that Howard Shore did.
Ones. I love the main theme.
Well, then again, because that's Howard Shore coming back.
That's really good.
But the other music, it was just a good score. Like, it fit well. It worked.
Yep.
Wasn't best. It's nothing like a...
I didn't mind it, but yeah.
Wasn't the best that I've heard. Didn't fit 100% well, but it wasn't the worst.
All right. Yeah.
It's no Bravehearts, no Lord of the Rings.
Right, yeah. I think it'll grow into it, though. Mm-hmm. I think it'll be interesting. Like, it's not... I'm glad, and I'll say, this is what I like to say publicly about stuff like this, is like, look...
We're only on episode 2.
We're only on episode 2. Secondly, we haven't heard all the Númenórean material yet, which, having heard Bear McCreary talk about it a little bit, I'm excited to hear that.
Because he's a good composer.
Right.
Like, I love his other work. His work on God of War was absolutely phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I haven't heard any of that. But I'll finish my point, is that he's doing his own thing. And he's not trying to do Bear McCreary's version of what Howard Shore would do in his situation.
Yeah.
Having been a composer in situations where you have to get close to other artists and stuff like that, it's not the easiest thing to do. And to have to do that for 6 months out of a year kind of a thing sounds insane.
When there's $1 billion show
and you have
at
a
the
ton
end
of
of
budget, it. Like, what? Hey, like...
I think the show in total, they said it's going to be around $1 billion.
$1 billion a season.
Yeah, well, they're Amazon. They make that in a minute, but...
Yep. Oh, I'm sure the subscriptions have gone through the roof in the last 2 days. I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, I think the score, I think it's going to be its own thing, and I think just for anybody out there, if I may address everyone, whoever's listening, mm-hmm. give that a shot. Like, it's a score, and the artist needs to be the artist.
Yeah.
And if the director's okay with it, having been in this situation before, that means... that's a good thing. That means it works for the story.
Like, they're not going to get some crappy director, we hope.
Well, no. Well, the thing is, as you're working with a director, once they approve something, you kind of have to move on. Mm-hmm. And they're the ones that are furnishing you with a huge budget. This is a big budget score, by the way. Like, this full orchestra, everything. Like, they're not screwing around with that. And I'm glad. But, Bear's doing his own thing. I use his first name. I don't know the man. I just know who he is. I've heard his scores. I heard Shield and everything like that. So I thought that was all right. And I think it will grow into being its own thing rather than being something that or even tries to stand in the shadow of Howard Shore, which I think is that's a net positive for the entire production and for artist mental health. Frankly, it's like
try to make this a Peter Jackson show,
right? Or a Howard Shore score. You can't. Like, there's one Howard Shore. It's just like people trying to copy Hans Zimmer. You can do it. It's just still not going to be Hans.
Yeah.
And that's because you're not Hans or you're not Howard. Like, and I'm speaking as somebody who would love to just be able to do a Howard Shore score. That would be great. Like, for me, he's the best living film composer.
John Williams for me.
Yeah, that's fine. You're wrong. Oh, there's a hot take. If you came here waiting for a hot take, it took about 45 minutes. But we finally got one. But I'm excited for the score to see the rest of the way it fleshes out. And I thought the choir work was good. Again, the dwarf stuff worked the best.
Yeah. Dwarves are easy to do. Not... Well,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like...
They're less ethereal.
Yeah, it's not like elves. You have to have everything pristine and perfect. You can make mistakes with the dwarf, and they'll be like, oh, that's just the dwarves.
Right.
Long beard, loud, annoying, big noses.
Gruff.
Yeah.
A little rough around the edges.
Yeah, it's a bit easier to get
someone to play. There weren't mistakes
dwarf.
in that score, though.
No.
I was listening. There aren't mistakes there. No. LA musicians don't make mistakes. It doesn't happen. Or I'm not even sure who they use. They might use London. actually don't know, but yeah, it sounds good. It looks good. I'm hoping they iron out some of these political elven intrigues that to me don't make sense. I'll make one more point about Galadriel, and then I'm probably good to go.
Yeah.
Is that one thing about Galadriel's temperament that doesn't sit right with me? Is she seems kind of like somebody that's more from Fëanor's side of the Noldor group, which ill-tempered, mercurial. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Fiery, definitely. Definitely very passionate about what they're doing, but flawed in it. And that I can tell you that's just not in the book. It's not there. And Galadriel hated Fëanor. Like, she did not have any use for him, and made it very plain. So that would be the thing. I hope that gets ironed out. I hope the writing reflects some of that, because I trust that all these writers, you become a screenwriter or you write novels or something like that, you have to read a lot. So I'm assuming they've all read this stuff.
Yeah, they've probably read the Silmarillion and read it before they worked on it.
Right.
But they can't outright say we are basing this off the Silmarillion, but they could probably read it and say we can use this. We just have to change the names. We just have to not throw it in this, but here's a good workaround of this.
It's not just that; it's that can inform what you're doing, and that will help shape it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's like I know they can't use direct things. They can't. I don't think they can say Finrod once. Otherwise, I think they would have said my brother Finrod. Like they would have used that. That would have made sense. That's a great Easter egg hunt for the Silmarillion people, by the way. Like things like that. A little Easter egg here and there. Oh my God, they mentioned Finrod. This is awesome. But I think some of that stuff that informs it behind the scenes, that doesn't seem to be there yet. And I'm hoping it does come to the fore eventually, because at least you can say, I know this enough to write it in a different way, because I'm sure they could. These people are skilled. They don't work in Hollywood for no reason.
Yeah. And you aren't getting hired by Amazon for no reason.
That's right. Yeah.
They're not picking up, I want to be a screenwriter person.
No, they're taking people that have worked on stuff beforehand. It's just like, what is it? McKay and J.D. Payne, they were both on Game of Thrones, I think, before this. So we
know how that ended, though.
I didn't watch it. I just know it was big. End well. It didn't end well. Okay, well, that's fine. We hope that it doesn't happen to Lord of the Rings. No. But that's all from me. Alex, you got anything else? Are you good?
I think I'm good for this.
All right, cool. Well, I assume we'll be back sometime next week for the next batch. So thank you very much for watching. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, drop us a comment or something like that. Be civil with one another, please. Enjoy watching the show and talking about it. These are our opinions. Like you have a Tolkien nerd and somebody that's sort of made a career on writing music because of Tolkien. That's my investment here. Yeah. And Alex is a fan of fantasy stuff, right? Is that about right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, and you all have a good one. See ya.